Welcome to the Monsters Among Us podcast. This is episode 20, 411 Phenomenon. After the last 3 episodes, we're taking a new look at the missing 411 cases. Could some of these have simple explanations?
That really is the big question, isn't it? We're diving into that today. Missing 411, it's a term from David Paulides, the former police officer turned author.
Right, and it refers to these really baffling disappearances, usually in national parks, wilderness areas, places like that.
Exactly. And what sets them apart from, say, the hundreds of thousands of missing persons reports filed every year are these strange details that keep popping up.
Yeah, it's not just getting lost, is it? It's more specific. Things like being near water or vanishing without leaving any sign at all.
Or being found miles away from where they were last seen, sometimes in areas that were already searched thoroughly.
And the survivors, if there are any, sometimes have memory loss, or they're found in these really peculiar states, physically or mentally.
Right. It's that cluster of weirdness, you could say, that really gets people thinking and speculating from, sensible ideas to some pretty out there theories.
So today, we're going to dig into a few specific cases, try to see if maybe, just maybe, there are less extraordinary explanations.
Let's do it. A good place to start might be Dennis Martin, Great Smoky Mountains National Park, way back in 1969.
Okay, Dennis Martin, 6 years old, camping trip with his family, and another family too, right?
That's the one. He apparently ran ahead on a trail, just playing around, planning to hide and sort of jump out and surprise the others.
The typical kid thing to do.
Totally.
Yeah.
But he was just never seen again after that moment.
And the search effort was huge, wasn't it? I read something like 1,400 people.
Oh, enormous. National Guard, Green Berets were involved, Boy Scouts, searching a 50-mile area. Massive operation.
And still, nothing definitive.
Pretty much nothing, which is baffling in itself, given the scale.
But wait, weren't there footprints?
Yeah.
That sounds like something child-sized footprints.
Ah, yes. That's a key point. There were prints found. One looked like it had a shoe, the other was barefoot. And the shoe print tread apparently matched Denny's shoe.
That sounds like him, right? Losing a shoe, maybe distressed.
You'd think so. But reports from the time suggest officials kind of dismissed them, thought maybe they belonged to a searcher or something.
Oh, yeah. That seems odd.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the bare footprint alongside the matching tread.
It does, yeah. Maybe a bias towards a simpler explanation back then. Or just confusion in a massive search. Hindsight,
And then there was that story years later, a ginseng hunter.
Right. In 1985, this guy claimed he'd found a child-sized skeleton in that same area years before.
Why didn't he report it?
Apparently, he was harvesting ginseng illegally and was afraid of getting into trouble. That's the story anyway.
So did they find anything when they finally looked?
No. By the time officials investigated based on his delayed report, whatever he might have seen was gone. So it's intriguing, but ultimately unverifiable.
Okay, so footprints dismissed, a possible skeleton that vanished. What else complicated things?
Well, a big factor was the weather. A heavy rainstorm hit the night after Dennis disappeared.
That would wash away tracks, scents, pretty much any evidence, wouldn't it?
Definitely complicates things hugely. And another factor, maybe less obvious, was the search itself.
How so?
Having over 1,000 volunteers, many likely untrained in careful search techniques, well, they could have unintentionally trampled or destroyed clues without even realizing it.
That's a grim thought. But makes sense, all those people covering the ground.
Yeah, and it apparently led to changes. The Park Service reportedly updated their search protocols after the Dennis Martin case, likely because of these issues.
It's a tragic case, lots of effort, but ultimately a mystery. It kind of sets the stage for what people call missing 411.
It really does. Now let's jump forward quite a bit. 2015, Idaho. The disappearance of a much younger child, 2-year-old Dior Coons Jr.
Dior Coons. Okay, another camping trip scenario, right? Near Timber Creek Campground.
Yeah, this one was apparently a bit impromptu. The family was camping, and the parents decided to pop to a store.
Leaving Dior with.
His great-grandfather, who had some health problems, needed oxygen, and also a friend was there.
Gotcha. And what happened?
Well, the timeline seems really compressed and confusing. Dior had walked towards a creek with his parents, then apparently turned back to go to his great-grandfather.
Mhm.
His mom reportedly called out to the great-grandfather something like, "Dior's coming back to you." But then, in that very short walk back, he vanished.
How short a walk are we talking?
Like, really short. Seconds, some accounts say. And the great-grandfather later said he never even saw Dior arrive back near him.
Wow. Okay, that's strange. And again, a big Search. Modern techniques this time.
Oh, yeah, extensive search, dogs, technology, the works. But again, nothing. No sign of Dior, no clothes, not even his little boots.
The boots, I remember reading about those. They were supposedly too big for him.
That's a detail that comes up. If they were too big, well, it's unlikely he could have run off very far, very fast on his own.
And maybe they'd have fallen off easily if someone took him.
That's the implication some people draw, yes. Especially since, apparently, no one heard any screaming or sounds of distress. You'd expect something from a 2-year-old.
Yeah, you really would. Were there any other leads? What about the parents?
Well, the sheriff did consider them persons of interest, at least for a time. Standard procedure in many cases, but it adds a layer.
And wasn't there something about the store trip?
There were reports, yeah, that the employees at the store didn't actually recall seeing Dior with his parents when they came in for supplies. Adds more uncertainty.
So, conflicting accounts. A very narrow window of time.
And you have to consider the great-grandfather's condition. On oxygen, potential health issues. Could there have been some confusion? Maybe dementia starting. Was he fully aware Dior was meant to be his responsibility right then?
That's possible, I suppose.
Yeah.
Very sad, if so.
Or, the simpler, maybe more likely possibility. He was 2. Toddlers wander. Fast.
True. And there was water nearby again, right?
Yeah.
The creek.
Exactly. Like a creek is a huge draw for a curious little kid. That water element pops up again.
Okay, so 2 kids vanishing. Let's shift gears. Kenny Beach. An adult this time, right? Nevada desert.
Yep, Kenny Veach. He was an experienced hiker, actually documented his trips out in the desert on YouTube, became quite well known for it in certain circles.
And he claimed he found something strange. A cave.
Yeah, he made a comment on someone else's video, I think, about finding this weird M-shaped cave. Said it had a strange energy, made his body vibrate.
An M-shaped cave.
But then people asked him where it was, and he couldn't initially pinpoint the location. So he decided to go back and find it again.
And he filmed that attempt.
He did. Went out in October 2014, filmed his search for the M Cave. Didn't find it on that trip, but the video itself got millions of views. People were intrigued.
So what happened then?
He posted another comment saying he was going back again, this time for a longer trip, like a whole weekend, to find the cave. And that was basically his last known communication online.
He went missing on that trip.
Shortly after, yeah, November 2014. Went out for what was supposed to be a short, maybe overnight hike, and just didn't come back.
Any clues found?
His cell phone was found near an old mine shaft, actually a spot where he'd filmed part of his earlier video. But Kenny wasn't there.
And his camera, the one he used for YouTube.
That was found back at his home, which is interesting.
And this was near Area 51, wasn't it?
Roughly, yeah. Which, of course, just poured fuel on the fire for all sorts of wild theories, aliens, secret government stuff, you name it.
But wasn't there a more down-to-earth theory from his ex-girlfriend?
There was. She suggested a possibility that, while incredibly sad, is perhaps more plausible: suicide.
Oh, really? Why did she think that?
She mentioned his father had died by suicide and suggested Kenny might have been struggling himself, maybe with mental health, maybe financial issues.
And leaving the camera behind the phone at the mine shaft.
Exactly. She theorized leaving the camera meant he didn't intend to film or return, and maybe leaving the phone was a way to throw off any search or tracking attempts. A deliberate disappearance.
That's a heavy possibility. But it makes a certain kind of sense. Could he have just decided to start over somewhere else?
Well, that's another possibility people raise. Just walk away from his life. Can't be ruled out entirely.
And there was that weird incident later at his sister's place.
Yeah, kind of bizarre. A few years later, 2018, there was a burglary at his sister's Reiki center. And apparently, the way the burglar acted, some specific mannerisms, even grabbing his knee in a way Kenny supposedly did, it made some people wonder if it could have been him if he was still alive.
Huh. Probably just a coincidence, but it adds another wrinkle, doesn't it?
It does. These cases are full of them. Which leads us naturally into the broader theories around missing 411.
Right. We've touched on some aliens, government conspiracies, maybe involving the National Park Service trying to cover things up.
Yeah, the idea that the NPS might downplay disappearances to avoid scaring tourists, that comes up. Then you get theories about organized crime, human trafficking.
Cryptids? Like
Yeah.
Bigfoot.
Cryptids definitely feature in some theories. Energy vortexes, interdimensional portals. It runs the gamut from the plausible, if criminal, to the truly out there.
And David Pauly's the guy who coined Missing 411. He's central to a lot of this discussion, highlighting these patterns.
He is. And as we mentioned, he's a former cop. He's written books, made documentaries, really focused on these perceived commonalities.
Didn't he write about Bigfoot before the Missing 411 stuff?
He did, yeah. 2 books on Bigfoot prior to this, which for some signals a pre-existing interest in the unexplained or fringe topics.
And hasn't there been some controversy about him, something about his background?
There has been scrutiny. Back in 1996, he was apparently charged with a misdemeanor related to fraudulent solicitation for a charity. It's something skeptics point to when questioning his research or motives.
Okay, so there's skepticism. What do the skeptics say about the patterns themselves?
Well, people like Kyle Pook from the Monterey County Skeptic Society have looked into Paul Ide's claims. They argue that sometimes information is left out or maybe incorrect details are included,
Like cherry-picking data.
or drawing connections that might be pretty thin. Pook highlighted an example where Paul Ide is apparently linked to completely unrelated disappearances simply because the victims shared the same first name, Amy Beale and Amy Wagner.
Ah. So seeing a pattern where maybe it's just coincidence.
That's the skeptical argument, that maybe these logical, if often tragic, explanations get overlooked because the more sensational theories are just more compelling to some people.
And the wilderness itself, it's just dangerous, isn't it?
But fundamentally, yes. Predators exist. The terrain can be treacherous, easy to fall, get injured. Poisonous plants, venomous creatures. Getting lost, it's surprisingly easy.
Oh, tell me about it. I got turned around once in a relatively small national park just for a few minutes, but it was disorienting how quickly you can lose your bearings when there aren't straight lines and street signs, you know?
Exactly. Nature doesn't have right angles. And then you factor in extreme weather changes, lack of water or food if you're unprepared.
And nature is really good at reclaiming things, isn't it? Evidence can disappear fast.
Incredibly fast. A body exposed to the elements, animal activity, evidence of an accident can be gone remarkably quickly.
What about that map? The one linking disappearances to cave systems.
Yeah, that's a controversial one. It overlays missing 411 case locations with known cave systems. Some people look at that and say, see, people are falling into caves, getting lost underground.
A rational explanation, maybe?
Or others see it as evidence for something else. Caves leading somewhere else, creatures living in caves. It fuels the more outlandish theories, too.
It really seems like there's this human tendency sometimes to look for the complicated answer, the conspiracy, instead of just bad luck, accidents, the inherent chaos of nature.
It does seem that way sometimes, but, beneath all the theories and speculation, we absolutely have to remember that every single one of these cases is a real tragedy. Real people are gone, and their families are left grieving and searching for answers.
Yeah, that's the crucial thing. And it brings up the whole ethics discussion around true crime and profiting from these terrible situations.
It's a valid point for the genre as a whole. And relevantly here, David Pauly himself experienced a terrible personal loss recently. His son Ben died by suicide in 2021. It's impossible to know, but you have to wonder how such a profound loss might impact his perspective on these cases of missing loved ones.
Absolutely. It adds another layer of complexity to the whole phenomenon. So while the patterns are intriguing, we need to be careful not to jump to conclusions.
Exactly. Critical thinking is key, weighing the strange details against the known dangers and possibilities of the environment.
Not every disappearance is linked to something mysterious. Just because it's unsolved doesn't mean it was a UFO. Nature can be harsh and dangerous. Always be prepared when venturing into the wild.